Salvati. I am the Government Relations Manager for Southern California Edison's Local Public Affairs, and I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you for making the time to join us here with our town hall meeting. I want to thank the city for allowing us to use the facility here at this beautiful city hall here at La Cañada Flint Ridge. And I wanted to just make sure before we start off and give you a little bit of background of what's going on in the community and what we're going to present today. I wanted to share a little bit of our safety moment that we can, let me see here. There we go. So at Edison, safety is our priority. We want to make sure that we provide you with some safety tips. We actually have a safety moment that we wanted to share with you. This is also actually available as well outside at our consumer affairs table that we had set up for everyone to visit and grab any of the collateral materials that we have available for you. So I wanted to just make sure and share with you a safety moment in terms of our vegetation management. We have our power lines and tree SCE, which is one of our collateral materials that we have available. And we also have an SCE right tree, and then the frequently asked questions about our right tree, what to plant under our lines. But customers may also request a vegetation management clearance inspection by calling this number. So a lot of times people have asked, how can we get our trees trimmed? We have that available through Edison with our vegetation management team that's able to help our customers in getting an approved contractor to do the work and work with you. So I wanted to make sure we share that safety moment before we go on to our program. Again, wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming. Today, we are pleased to have our Executive VP joining us in sharing with you some of the information that we wanted to provide to you regarding our system reliability here at City of La Cañada Flint Ridge, but specifically to the Haskell circuit, which is our Haskell 16 kV. We actually have information. We have our subject matter experts available here today as well to answer any questions that you may have later on. We will provide to you a little bit of a presentation to give you an update on some of the things that we've done, that we've completed already, and what is upcoming in the communities of City of La Cañada Flint Ridge. We have in the audience, actually just wanted to also outline, we have some Edison employees, but also residents of City of La Cañada Flint Ridge. One of our executives also reside here in La Cañada. Shinjini, I know, but you're not in Haskell. She is actually also a resident and one of our executives. Our former executive, Jim Nimick, actually resident of Haskell and a former resident, and Mark Martinez is another resident who lives in the Haskell. So we do have a number of employees. So at this time, I would like to ask our leader here in the City of La Cañada Flint Ridge, our newly elect mayor of our City of La Cañada Flint Ridge, Kim Bowman, to give us a few introductory and welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Y'all hear me okay? All right. Thank you for being here. It's summer break, and we have families and vacations and things to do, and you made it important to be here. So thank you for being a part of the conversation. And that's what we expect that tonight will be, because as was mentioned, we are simply hosts. We've got the AV, we've got the room. But this isn't a City of La Cañada Flint Ridge meeting. That's because, in part, Southern California Edison doesn't work for the City of La Cañada. We have no jurisdiction, no control over what SCE does. We are a client just like you. The city, every month, we sign a check, we pay a power bill just like you do. And so this is an opportunity for us as individual members of the community to ask our partners in the delivery of power questions that we have about how that's going, how that contrasts to how it's been going, and what the plan is to make sure that that delivery is successful. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts and questions. And unlike a regular city meeting where there's cards and people up here, that because this isn't our meeting, there are no cards. This is SCE's meeting, but I think that you're just going to be able to get in line and grab the microphone and ask your questions. But I will simply ask that as partners with SCE and with each other, we're thoughtful about how much time we take to do that. So if a question has been asked twice, maybe not a third time if you don't think it could be done a different way. If we have statements to make, I appreciate that. Let's make sure that we're making those statements in a friendly fashion, a family-friendly fashion. We are broadcast live to the whole world right now. And let's make sure that our questions are thoughtful to get the kind of thoughtful responses that I know that's what La Cañadans are about. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much again for being here, and I'm going to pass it over.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate those words. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Executive Vice President at Southern California Edison and Edison International, which is our parent company. Jill Anderson has been with the company since 2018. I guess I could say you're a transplant from back east, New York, come here to California, and now runs one of the largest utilities here in California. And so today I have the pleasure of introducing her and hoping to have her share with us her thoughts and how we can better our relationship, our partnership, and the things that we're doing here in the city of La Cañada, Flint Ridge. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Jill Anderson.
Thank you so much, Marissa. And really, thank you all for having us today. Thank you to the City of La Cañada for hosting us. And I echo the mayor's gratitude for all of you showing up in person or joining us online. It is exactly going to be as he described. We are going to have a conversation. We have just a couple of minutes of opening remarks. We're going to also get into a little bit of detail about what the experience has been here and the work that we've been doing. But then we want to be able to spend a lot of time in the Q&A. And so with that, one thing that has been clear from me in the conversations that I've had to have with many of you as we were gathering for this meeting is that the priorities here in La Cañada include, safety and resiliency and reliability. And I want to assure all of you that those are our priorities too. And at Southern California Edison and me, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the company. There is nothing more important to us than serving our communities safely and keeping the power on whenever it is safe for us to do so. Those are our priorities. We work on that day in and day out. Now, it's been more than 6 months since the terrible fires and windstorms of January. And I know the flames didn't reach La Cañada, but I can imagine that many of you in this community were still affected. You probably evacuated, had to go through the anxiety that happens in an event like that. My family and I were evacuated. You probably had second order effects for a while, maybe housing friends and neighbors who themselves were out of their homes and may still be. And those terrible events, even though it's been 6 months, I know for us, it will always feel like it was just yesterday. It's very fresh for us. And as a reminder that the extreme weather and extreme fire behavior, it's not just an abstract threat, but it is something that is very real, it's very urgent, and for every one of us, it's very personal. And so at Edison, we focus on mitigating wildfire risks in our business. And that includes billions of dollars that we've already spent in upgrading, including here in La Cañada and the surrounding area. But also, if you look forward the next 3 years, we have another $6 billion budgeted that we're going to spend doing things like upgrading the conductors, even doing more undergrounding, and we're going to talk about that and undergrounding opportunities here in La Cañada. It also is investments that we're making on new technology. We're using artificial intelligence. We're doing more with real-time weather and fire models so that we can understand what's happening out there in the system. We have more cameras and more weather stations, and we're updating our customer-facing tools, the outages, and the way that you can get communication from us in the event that there are issues. Now, I'm talking about wildfire, but that's just one of the types of impacts that I know this community has had. And the majority of the time that we're going to spend tonight is really going to be talking about the year-round type of reliability issues that have been going on here, not just wildfire. And I know they have been going on for a long time. We could go back to last year, we could go back to 2021, we could go back to 2013. I'm sure we could go back further than that, where this community has had what I will characterize as an unacceptable level of service. And I know that you have heard from us about the things that we're going to do, and you've heard from us that we agree that it is not acceptable. And it has been years, and while we have made a lot of improvements, I think what you're going to experience from us tonight is the most comprehensive update, where we're going to go through in detail the last several years of outages, what types and what causes they were. I know they weren't all related to squirrels. Some of you have brought that up to me already. And so we're going to talk about what caused them, and then we're going to go into the type of work that we've already finished and map that against the types of outages that you've been experiencing so that you can see how we are looking at the progress. But we're going to be honest with you, and we're also going to show you the gap, because we haven't finished and closed everything yet, and we still have exposure to reliability issues here in the community. I know the last one that many of you experienced was on Mother's Day this year. And we're going to go through then, after we show you what's happened, what we've done, what we have ahead, and what that work is going in detail out till the end of 2026, and how fast that we can feel like we can work to make sure that we are getting you to an acceptable level of service, not the unacceptable level that you've been experiencing now. Now, while we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about squirrels, we are going to talk about vegetation, because now, that is not the cause of all of your outages, but there is a thread in several of the outages that we do believe we can reduce the risk by doing what we're called enhanced vegetation management. And so we've already started working on that, but that requires a real partnership. And that's something that I'm very grateful for the city, because they have been incredible partners with us on this already. And in the areas where we need to do work and the city is in control of that, they have been in lockstep with us. But we also have to do work in areas where the city's not in control and Edison's not in control, but the individual homeowners are. And that is one thing that we understand about La Cañada, and I live in a community right near here. We understand that people love the trees, and we love the canopy, and we love the aesthetic of that and the beautiful surroundings. I do too. But we are working with certified arborists, and we are working with customers individually to be able to create individual trim plans so that we can address the safety and reliability issues that some of these locations are causing, and also, where possible, address the aesthetic issues. Now, vegetation management you'll hear us talk about, but you're also going to hear us talk about those investments. When I opened with what we're doing broadly on wildfire, that applies right here in La Cañada. So you're going to hear from us, what are we doing about increasing more cover conductor? What are we doing about increasing the undergrounding? And more areas where, again, that requires us to work as partners. And so, as Marissa said, we have our subject matter experts here. In a minute, I'm going to ask Joe Jakunski to come up here, and he's going to talk through some of those outages and those details that I just talked about. But the last thing I want to mention before I do that is that I hope what you take away from here is that we want the same things. We want reliable electric service to La Cañada. We want safe electric service to La Cañada. We want peace of mind for ourselves, for our families, for our businesses, that it is a safe community with reliable electric service. That is our objective, and I know that is an objective that you share, and I think keeping focused that we want the same thing can help us close that last gap on the things we need to do, on the work that's still ahead of us to make sure that we can get you to an acceptable level of service. So as the mayor said, this is going to be a conversation. Joe is going to come up. We'll finish our formal presentation, but then I'm going to stay here for the remainder. We have our subject matter experts, and we're going to take your questions, and we can take questions on what we present here or take questions on anything else that's on your mind. And so I'll bring Joe up, and then you'll see me for the rest of the Q&A.
Thank you, Jill. As she mentioned, my name is Joe Jakunski, so I'm the Principal Manager for Distribution Engineering for the area that includes La Cañada. So we'll be giving a summary here of what Haskell is, because that's one of the most impacted circuits in La Cañada, and some of the work we're doing, as she mentioned, and the effect we expect that to have. So what you see on the chart behind me is a picture of where Haskell is on La Cañada. The way that map is orientated, so the top there is north. So as you can see, that Haskell circuit covers a big portion of the northern piece of La Cañada, as well as a piece on the southern portion there as well. So La Cañada, or Haskell, is a fairly large circuit with 27 miles of conductor, and a lot of that right now is overhead, and a lot of that is covered as well. And then what you see in the performance statistics below that is covering is when we insulate the conductor on the overhead lines. So most wires are bare wires because they're up in the air, so the air will insulate them. We've added covering in high fire risk areas, and we've also done it in areas to improve reliability as well. So we cover the wires, the entire piece. And we'll talk about that. Actually, one of the projects we did was to add some additional in areas where already is covered. So if that's a good question, we'll get that in just a minute. But what I wanted to acknowledge with the outage statistics is not only has it been your feedback that's let us know that this area isn't performing well, but it also shows up in the statistics we use to determine where we want to make investments from a reliability perspective. So the system does work to cure these issues, but your feedback is always welcome. It does help us highlight where issues and performance that is deviating from normal is showing up. So on this one, we've got again, that same picture of the larger Haskell circuit. And then we've highlighted 4 major projects that are going on. I want to start with the one that's sort of in the bottom left here, or my left, your right. That's in the area of Berkshire. So if you think about the streets on La Cañada, that area. So this has been one of the most impacted areas on Haskell itself. In addition to some of the area outages, there's been a lot of localized outages in that area. What's unique about that area is a big portion of it is built with what we call aerial bundled cable. And it, above and beyond just normal covered conductor, it's actually underground cable that's been tied to a steel messenger for that area. And so that's the same underground cable we would put underground. What's unique about that is beyond the normal covering that's there, at the poles, it would normally open up so we could attach things like transformers or drops to people's homes. So one of the big projects here is we've actually started replacing that normal overhead equipment that would go to your house at the pole or to attach a transformer with the same underground elbows and components. Normally that's not needed because of where it is on the pole. Wind, trees don't normally get into that section of the pole because it's cleared. This is, when we talk about squirrels, this is one of the areas where we've had a lot of squirrel outages. As Jill mentioned, there's a lot of other events that have gone on in the circuit as well, but that's what some of that work in that bottom corner is doing. So we've completed that work in that area. There was a portion that was completed in April, and then there was another portion that was just completed here in late June. So we're expecting a lot of improvement from that work that's already been completed. There's a little bit more work there to continue in September that we have going on as well. Next, I'll move across to the other side. So my right, your left, the red highlighted, or sorry, the purple highlighted area there. There's 3 laterals there that are part of our targeted undergrounding program. So the overhead lines that go into those communities and feed those homes will be replaced with underground lines. And that's being done for a couple of reasons. One, that area is one because of the high fire risk that we would need to cover or underground to eliminate that risk. And given the nature of that area, we were able to underground it because of the way the streets were laid out and the constructability of that. It also had some reliability impact on the overall circuit. So by undergrounding that, we can eliminate some of the animal and vegetation outages that we've had in that area as well. Then moving up to the top, again, my right, your left, you'll notice the area on the northern portion, that's the one highlighted in red. So there we're installing the covered conductor. So again, that's the wire that's insulated. And that's giving us a couple of benefits. One, it increases our fire protection. So it allows us to have higher wind thresholds to prevent public safety power shutoffs or reduce the need for those because of that covering in that area. The covered conductor also has benefits for, again, vegetation mitigation and animal mitigation as well by covering that and preventing tree branches that are blown away or animals from getting into that section. And then the final piece in the green section there is the main part of the circuit that goes through the park. Thank you. So that section will also be covered. That one will have a big impact because of, again, the high fire risk from the area. So that'll, again, help reduce the need for public safety power shutoffs by covering that area. There was also an animal and a weather outage in that area. So the conductor replacement that's going on there will help, again, mitigate those types of events. So 4 major projects. Some of that work is already done. A lot of it will continue through about mid to late 2026, with the latest being the undergrounding and the work that it takes to do that in that area. The Berkshire area is the one highlighted in red or orange. It's a little difficult to see. And then, yeah. So this area down here, there's also a section here along Gould that's similarly construction where we also did work very similar to installing the full. Yep, correct. That's where we installed a lot of those underground components to further add to that aerial bundled cable to fully enclose much of that section to prevent animals and trees from getting in on those locations. So with this slide, I wanted to highlight the impact we expect that to have on the community. So in this area, we've had 7 circuit level outages. So those are outages that would affect the full almost 1,600 customers on Haskell, which is a lot for a circuit. I don't know if we're able to zoom in on it. I will. Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and read them off just so that we can make sure. So the top part there. So since January, we've had the 7 circuit level outages. 3 of those were in areas that we know we've done work that would have mitigated the outage that occurred. One of those is in work that we have the work scheduled for September, and we expect that type of outage to be mitigated in the future. Another of those is in the area where we have that undergrounding work targeted for 2026. So if you look at that, of the 7, we've completed the work to mitigate 3 of those into the future. 2 of those are part of the planned work we have. Of the 2 remaining outages, one of those was a underground cable failure. That was the one that occurred on Mother's Day. And so that was the repair to fix that was done during the outage, and those elbows were rebuilt to prevent that from occurring again. And then the final one on that was the January, the weather related outage when we had that significant wind events. Yep.
13 outages on Haskell Station or Circuit in 2024.
So the bottom section of that is there's been 13 outages that impacted smaller sections. So those top 7 impacted everybody. Those bottom 13 impacted different parts of the circuit at different times. So yeah, in addition to the 20 events here, there's been several. Yep. Yep. In addition to these listed here, there's been several more localized outages. This is also the outages that are longer than 5 minutes. The outages that are shorter than 5 minutes are what we would call a momentary outage. That's typically related to something interfering with the lines. An animal or tree are examples, but there's other things that could have occurred. And so what we'll do is open it to allow that trouble, the animal or the tree, to clear without further energizing it or causing arcs. We'll wait 30 to 60 seconds and then reclose and energize power to see if that hazard has cleared. So, yep. Yep. Yeah, that's correct. So those momentaries are definitely long enough that your computer is going to reset, your clocks are going to reset. So it's not that those aren't significant. I don't mean to suggest that, but as we mitigate the outages, those temporary events are the same type of events. So a lot of those momentaries are from clearing animals or trees. And as we do the work we've described here, that'll also help with those momentary outages. Mhm. Correct.
How many of
It-
those are in all the other circuits? Because I'm glad you redid those, but how many others are out there that are just going to die or break because of their age, if nothing else?
The ones that failed were approximately 15 years old. The typical life of underground cable is anywhere from 30 to 40 years, depending on where it's installed. And we don't have a specific root cause that I can trace down and say it was this. Likely the number of other events contributed to those failing. Yeah, the faults, so the events triggering those momentaries, yes, stress the electrical system.
Ma'am, let me give you the microphone because
Yep.
they're trying to live stream and so they want to make sure.
So rebuilding those, is that working? Am I close? Rebuilding those particular elbows on that particular line that stopped on Mother's Day does not guarantee the other elbows on that line don't go or that any other elbows anywhere else in town goes. So you're fixing the problems as they come up. You've spent billions, but it's not working from our point of view. And you admit it's unacceptable. We don't have an option. We can't go anywhere. It's not working. Doing the same thing and expecting a better result isn't working.
No, I appreciate that. So the two things I was going to mention are, one, we do track the age so that we can do those age related. And then there's also underground inspections where we track and inspect underground equipment on a regular basis to look for potential damages and mitigate issues before they turn into outages. So we can do switching and restore customers while repairing those without an interruption. I would agree based on the performance that we've seen.
You agree it sucks, doesn't give us any confidence. We pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills or the check doesn't get there on time, even if it's stolen or mailbox, we get dinged. You don't get dinged, except when there's a massive fire. When you admit you guys knew about this re-energizing phenomenon on the hooked together wire, if you knew it, why was that cable still in place? Why hadn't it just been dropped to the ground? We don't feel that you seem to have a handle on what needs to be done and are proceeding in a way that is going to fix service or fires.
No, I appreciate that. I'll comment on fixing the outage issues. I don't know if Jill, if you want to comment on, I know there's a lot going on in the fires beyond just the engineering piece. So,
And Joseph, I don't know how many more slides we have. And just for the purpose of live stream, and I know I was reminded that if people have questions, if you want to raise your hand, I'll run to you and give you the mic because they want to make sure that everybody, hears it that's listening on the live stream. So if you want to finish off so that we can move on with the questions that we have from the audience.
yeah. So to summarize that on the bottom for the 13 smaller outages, of those 9 we've traced to areas where the work we've done, we expect to mitigate those outages as well. And then just on the last side here, I think what I want to highlight here is with the work we're doing, there's significant work in progress. So about 65% of the outages that have occurred, we'd expect to be mitigated by the work that we have done or have in progress. As you mentioned, we continue to monitor it and look for other things that we can proactively go do. So there's a lot of active programs to try and get in front of issues. And then the last piece for the work we're doing, by the time we're done, about half of the Haskell circuit will be undergrounded, which we expect to make some improvements. And in addition to that, there's another big portion that added covering where we've had issues. We expect to mitigate a lot of the reliability issues as well. So,
Buried. How much of a percentage have you increased it? You say it's about half buried. How much was it buried before? You're not giving us numbers where we can see clear progress in certain areas that can be tracked. How much is yet to do?
So appreciate that the material's hard to read from the audience. We can make all of this available and make it so that you can look at it directly. We didn't bring printed out copies, but the answers to all of your questions are right here. So we have another 2.2 miles that out of the 15 miles that were not underground, we're adding 2.2 miles to be underground by the end of next year. Undergrounding projects are not feasible in every single location, and they take 3 to 4 years generally from engineering to completion, and they're very expensive. So we don't intend to underground 100% of this circuit. That's not going to be feasible, but we will be adding from what he showed on the previous slide, from 13 miles to 15 miles, something like that, will be underground on the Haskell. And then we're taking what is now, like 7 miles of bare conductor, that we're taking another, 2 or 3 miles out of that will be covered. So we're significantly shrinking how much of the conductor will be left bare, and that's only going to be in the section that's not considered high fire. But we'll continue to look and evaluate to see if we need to do more in those areas. So I appreciate that you're not going to leave here feeling like, okay, Edison is done. That proof of that is going to be that your service level improves. But I can tell you that every single thing that Joe has gone through here has been working towards improving that service level. And we do believe that we can track this project has resulted in avoiding an outage in the last 10 years that would have happened had we not done this project. Yes, a question right there.
Yes, thank you. So, this has been going on, as we said, for decades, but it's been getting worse and worse and worse. So after a period of a lot of outages, in 2021, it was December of 2021, there was, Edison made a big announcement and said, we're going to have several days of planned outages. We're going to do a massive upgrade of the equipment. A giant new pole went up next to our house with, the covering the a huge project and so we were without power. We knew it for days, and it didn't. Our power situation now is worse than it's ever been, 28 times in the last 2 years, which we all know is unacceptable. So I'm curious after, and I remember you had helicopters flying, low helicopters every corner of La Cañada. So we were told then that a massive improvement was underway that was going to address all these issues. So it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. What is different this time from last time when we were told that was going to fix all of our problems? That's number one. And then secondly, to our previous speaker's point, all of us have huge power bills, which we pay. And I personally feel like part of the issue is you've not really had accountability to this community. We haven't been able to get in touch with you. I'm so thrilled that you're having this meeting. But how can we hold you accountable? Should you be penalized? Should our bill be credited in some way? Should we get monetary compensation when we can't work for a day, or we have to reschedule an event like Mother's Day and take 20 people out to dinner? So those are two separate questions, and I appreciate your answering them.
Maybe I'll start with the first one about why are we seeing upgrades in some areas, but you're still experiencing reliability issues. I think looking at the circuit map can maybe help explain that, because we might be doing a project or investing in one section. Joe called them laterals, we call them branches, they have all different words. You can see the circuit isn't one continuous line, it's lots of little pieces that move through different sections of the area. So we might have done an upgrade that fixed an issue that was on your section, but then if something happens upstream closer to the source, or for us we call it the substation, you're still going to lose your power. That doesn't mean that the upgrade right outside your house wasn't valuable. It absolutely was. It avoided an outage later that we can't prove, but didn't happen likely. But when something happens upstream, and a good example is the one you were just talking about, ma'am, about the underground component, because a lot of the upstream work here is underground, that's going to affect everybody. And so that's why what we're trying to explain here is it's not just one solution. It's this whole suite of things that we are doing in parallel. It's making sure that we are monitoring the age and the health and doing these proactive inspections so that we can replace components before they fail. It's upgrading to cover conductor when that's the fastest. It's undergrounding where that's feasible. It's changing out overhead to underground components, which is very unusual, but it is something that we think is going to help in certain sections here, because it's this maze you can see of electric circuitry behind me, and it's all interconnected. So the people who tend to have the worst reliability are going to be at the end points, because when anything is happening upstream, even if their own section has been upgraded, that upstream area is creating the outage for you. So that's your first part. The second question you asked was about accountability. So there are many ways that we're held accountable as a company and as individuals of this company, right? So we have goals that we are required to meet, standards on service levels. We track reliability as far as minutes of reliability that are happening across the system. We track ignitions that happen from the system. We track safety incidents, public safety and worker safety. So there's a set of goals that we track, that we report publicly, that we're held to. When those aren't met, that impacts the compensation of every single Edison employee. So that happens every single year. There's that suite where reliability is one of those, safety is one of those, wildfire is one of those, and that affects everybody's compensation when we aren't meeting those goals. Additionally, we're heavily regulated, and the regulatory structure puts in place requirements for us to do service level credits in certain situations. Now, if they're weather related, generally those don't apply. There's a whole set of metrics that we don't design, but that the commission, the California Public Utility Commission, designs and holds all utilities accountable to. And so hopefully that's responsive. She just wants to go in order and then provide the microphone. So we'll come back to you. Okay.
He gave it.
I appreciate the fact that you may get dinged in your compensation or something like that. Public filings wouldn't really suggest it so far, but I think my wife's question was more, how does that relief come to the customers? So you may get fined by PUC, all of that. What kind of relief are the customers being provided when the service is admittedly inconsistent, unreliable, and unacceptable?
So there's a claims process that customers who have an extended outage, when it's the responsibility of the utility and it meets those regulatory preset requirements, goes through. Admittedly, that's not going to apply to a 5-minute outage or something that, a windstorm brings a tree branch down. That's not going to result in any sort of reimbursement for loss. So, but there is a criteria that all utilities are managed to, where that is available to customers, and it's a limited case, which I can appreciate is frustrating.
One of the overall concerns here is, and I appreciate the point on vegetation safety, but implicit in all this is the suggestion that only the Haskell circuit has trees that interfere with lines.
Yeah.
The rest of La Cañada seems to be doing fine. Or apparently we have the really hungry squirrels.
Yeah.
And it's just, right?
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I would be embarrassed to use the squirrel thing as like a defense, but separately, there's something with Haskell,
Right.
and to be candid, the 2024 results are not good
Agree.
if looking at those numbers, to me. So what is it, the rest of La Cañada seems to be doing okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so there will be other residents who will share that they have had outages. Haskell is an outlier, but when we track, we have thousands of distribution circuits, and when we look at the performance of all of them, Haskell's not the worst performing circuit, but it is in the top
Yikes.
10, top 5. But there's a lot of reasons why other circuits are experiencing outages, and we're working on comprehensive solutions to address those similarly. Yes.
So I have two comments. I don't want to say we, I appreciate you guys putting this glossy presentations. These presentations have been going on for decades now as it relates to the updates, improvements, repairs, analysis, so on and so forth. But in the end of the day, when it comes, in the end of the day, the results matter. You've gone, and after all these upgrades and repairs that you are indicating you're doing or you've done, as I mentioned, you've had 28 outages. The level of the increase is so dramatic from 2020, 2021, and 2023. In 2025 alone, you've had 7 outages to date, and we are barely halfway through the year. So in the end of the day, to just cover what she indicated initially, you're not providing any results. We understand whatever work you're doing, the resources that you're expanding, they are not providing any results. You have outages, you're affecting people's lives, businesses, their children. Day to day, we are all here speaking about the normal flicking a switch and asking for a reliable current so when people wake up or go to home after a stressed out day, they can attend to their children and just use the electricity for their normal functions for living, from hot water to internet and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to explain is that all of these that you're explaining, it's nice you guys are doing, but it's not providing any results. It is clearly shown in the number of the outages you're having on Haskell circuit. My house is on Haskell. I have had 28 outages, and across the street with the same vegetation, same landscape, they've had maybe 1 during the whole time frame that I've had 28 or 17. You guys are not you guys are not providing any results that it's actually material and it's matter. Number 2, you have now streamlined your customer service to a level that people during outages can only get text or can reach some sort of like a voice assistant program, which it's absurd. And I'm assuming you guys are doing that because, first of all, you guys don't have the answer to provide your customers why it's happening. And you don't even have results. What are you guys going to do? We appreciate you guys doing all of this stuff and trying to update us, but all of the people here, they're looking for results. In the end of the day, results matter. I really don't care. I don't understand any of this. This is way over my pay grade. All I care is that I need results. I need to make sure I have current reliable electricity so I can attend to my kids, their lives, their safety. You're talking about safety. There are many people in this city that they rely on their safety because of the electrical equipment that they use. So what is your excuse for not providing safety because of not having an electricity? You're not providing results, ma'am, with all due respect.
Yeah, let me speak to the concern about customer service, because I think up until now, Joe and I have mostly been covering the grid itself and the infrastructure investments, but the customer service is an important part of your experience, and we understand that. And I know that that has been one where it has been challenging for you to feel like you're getting the answers you want at the time when you need them. Maybe the outages are happening at the time when we're not fully, it's a weekend or evening and you can't get through to someone in person, or even when it's during the day, because our system is set up in order to allow people to self-serve. It is a process where you have to go through the menus in order to finally get to be able to speak to a person. Just as we have been making these investments on the infrastructure side, we're also making investments on the customer side, because we understand that customers want better experience from us during these, whether it's a maintenance outage or an unexpected repair outage, or even if they just have a question about their bill. I understand that it is often difficult for people to feel like they can reach a person. Not all of our customers want to talk to a person. So we make investments in both areas. We've made significant investments in the website and self-service so that you can more easily look up your address, see if there's an outage that's already been reported. We've made updates very recently, just in the last, I think it was 3 weeks, where we've made it more clear, okay, someone's already reported this outage, a crew is already on site, a crew has found the problem, or maybe a crew is still investigating the problem, so that you can see more clearly what's the status of the outage that you're currently experiencing, so that you don't even need to speak to a person, so that way it's available to you and you don't have to wait in line when a lot of other customers might be calling.
Why
So that's very recent, that update, but you're not the first customer to tell us that that has not been helpful for you, and so we continue to make those investments.
Sure, but why is it that when we call a couple days after and ask for the reasoning of the outage, they still don't know what the answer is? I've personally, Marisa knows me here, unfortunately. I've personally contacted her well over 20 times. First of all, I don't get any response, even though she's the public person for Edison. But in the end of the day, even when I call the customer service to find out what the reasoning of the outage is, I never get an answer. They never know what the cause of the outage was. Why?
So we don't always know. And when we send a troubleman out, Joe was explaining an example where there could be a fault, and then our system, which is designed to open automatically, see if it clears. Sometimes it's just a branch that's just touching and it creates a fault and then opens. Correct. The circuit breaker opens, which turns off your service, and it's designed so that it will automatically reclose in and see if it has cleared itself, which often is the case. Now, those, I'm not minimizing the impact of those outages. That's disruptive. That means whatever you're in the middle of doing, you don't know if it's about to come back on. I understand that. But in those cases, when then power comes back on, even sometimes when we will send a troubleman, which is our highest level of utility worker, our highest line worker out, there won't be evidence of what happened because it was temporary. And so the system will not have a reason code. Other times when a repair actually happens, underground elbow failure, the crew will go out, and when they see what happened, they will put into the system, the reason for this outage is an underground elbow failure. They won't use elbow, but they'll say underground equipment failure. And so that will go into the reason code. When you speak with someone in customer service, the only thing that they have for them is that reason code. They can't call the actual crew. They won't know who was the one who was actually on site. So it relies on our team to make sure that when we're doing those investigations that we're fully documenting what's the reason, but we are not always going to be able to know what the reason was for every outage. But whenever we do, they're instructed to put that reason code in.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. This isn't any fun for you, but being a customer of Edison is not very fun for us. And I think you can hear the tension in the room
Of course.
and the frustration in the room, especially when we talk about things like accountability. The Edison is a publicly held company, and we have the fires. We have a history of fires at Edison. We have a history of poor service. The CEO of Edison, and this is all public information, the CEO of Edison in 2022 made $12 million. The CEO of Edison in 2024 made $14 million. And if you look at the compensation tables in your proxy statement, all the senior executives are getting great raises every year. And who's accountable for service failures and who's accountable for issues that happen? It's us who's accountable. Because what happens, you apply for rate increases to compensate you for having to incur the costs, and we pay for it in higher utility bills. So the question of who's accountable, we're all accountable for your service failures. And you go to the I went to the Edison website today. Try to find a phone number somewhere on the Edison website. Talk about communications. We get a text message that we're going to have a power outage about 2 hours after the power outage occurs. We get another text message advising us that the power's back on about 2 hours after the power's already on. Communications are horrible. Service is abysmal. Any business that will have had the track record that the Edison executives have had get fired. If you're a baseball manager and you have a team that loses as much as Edison loses, you get fired. But the executives at Edison get pay raises increases every year. And where do those pay raise increases come from? From the utility payers. We pay for those. So stockholders don't get diluted. If you need to raise money to pay for things like equipment increases, well, then capital should be raised and stockholders maybe should be diluted. Or maybe some executives ought to lose their jobs. Or maybe executives ought to actually see a decrease in their pay. So I appreciate what you said about your performance standards and your compensation goals and whatnot. But that, believe me, that's blarney. All you have to do is look at the publicly disclosed information, and you can tell that you're not really being honest with us right now. You seem like a very nice person. You seem like you're very thoughtful. And, but the message from us is, the words we've been hearing for a long time, we've seen no action behind the words, and there really isn't any evidence that you really care. Gamer here sends email messages to her. She never responds to email messages to him, ever.
We care about results.
So the words are nice to hear, and you being here tonight is really great. But I think you're hearing it from all of us. It'll be interesting to see what happens after tonight. I hope what you're saying comes to pass. We all hope our power outages diminish. But your track record's not great. And I hope you come through for us. We need you to come through for us. We want you to succeed because we all will win then. I think Mayor Bowman's comments about this being a partnership is important because when you win, we all win. So we're rooting for you.
Thank you.
We hope you do come through for us.
I appreciate that.
Again, agreed with everything you said. I've covered plenty of what I wanted to say too. I think many of us had a lot of things to do tonight. I was supposed to have a family dinner celebrating a personal thing and, also Dodgers game. However, this lets you know where this ranks in priority, that no, we're going to be here and doing this kind of again. I'm really glad to see some specifics of things that have been done. But when you say things like the system is working because we see it needs to be fixed, and you look at the dates and how far back this goes, I don't think the system's working. I'm a system engineer. I look at interfaces. I look at things like failure analysis. I look at things like reliability. You are at best touching proximate causes. You've done nothing for root cause. You don't get a change in behavior when you don't go after the root cause. There has to be proactive maintenance. There has to be something to actually quantify what's actually happening so that you know what actually is going to matter out of what's being done. None of those particular projects are anywhere near my particular little branch. I get the frequent flyer benefits of the issues here. When we go on vacation, we don't just call to have the drive-by of your house to make sure everything's okay. We don't just stop the mail. We send important things that are in our freezer to other people. We've helped teach other people how to work a generator should it become one of those really long ones, because we really don't want to lose everything again. Our appliances don't last. Yeah, there are benefits. You can make a claim, but you've got to show that it was actually tied to all of these little blips that you can't get anybody to actually tell you what actually happened. So in terms of customer service, so I have a certain amount of empathy for trying to figure out how are you going to deal with a bunch of angry people who are trying to figure out something. Simplify your system. I don't mind if I'm talking to a robot, but having to talk to that robot for several solid minutes to give a bunch of different prompts to just report an outage after I hear things I know very well by heart by now about not touching down power lines and that their menu options have changed. I don't need that anymore. What I need is a very quick, no more than 2 buttons or numbers or prompts to say there's an outage and it's here.
Yeah.
I don't need the steps along the way because they're always wrong. Not only do you tell me my power is going to be off after I'm the one who reported it and it's been off for a long time, nor do I need to hear that it's going to be restored in 20 minutes, 40 minutes ago. These things send like they're being sent from time machines. They're telling me that in the past it's working and it's not. The cable company knows when it's going to be down and it's going to be down long because they're tired of getting secondary ticked off people calling them. And they're saying it's because of a power outage. And so as soon as the power is out, that they will be back too. All right. I don't need all the steps along the way. I want to know you've got it and you're working on it. If you really know when it's coming back on, please do tell. If you don't know, do not tell me. It's going to be on 20 minutes ago. And then after the fact, I do want to know whether you know or not what it is. And I think it's perfectly fair to ask on a circuit like this, if we're in your top 5, top 10, you got a whole lot of people, maybe you have a website that actually tracks them so that we know that you know. And if you do know what it is, you say it. And if you don't, you say, but it was short and it was, resolved, couldn't find a problem. But if you don't start getting curious beyond that, we're going to keep fixing the thing that's literally smoking and on fire, we're going to have a problem. It'll continue to have a problem. We already have problems, right? So let's maybe not fix the customer service to add in a bunch more things that are all going to be wrong and all just infuriate more people and cost you money at the same time. Let's make it real simple to report, real simple to know that you got it. And then maybe you fix it in a way that actually looks a little bit beyond the thing that's actually broken right now and the thing that's about to be broken. Yeah. And if you really do have programs that help with things like broken appliances, I don't even know what what washing machine I'm on at this point. How about we make sure we can actually get to them and that we don't get caught up in the red tape of, well, we're not sure if it's that. When you have 20 something outages, it is your fault that my washing machine's broken. Mm-hmm. It is. But I don't have those kind of hours to deal with that. And it's sad. And you're right. Who's accountable? Who's being held accountable? It's just not happening. So please don't make us wait to the point where we've all, moved on. We're gonna have to tell people who try to buy our house that you can't count on power here. Mm. I think we've reached that level of bad where we have to report these kinds of things. It's crazy. Yeah.
I guess I would like to understand why you can't put enough money into this to solve the problem. I worked at the Walt Disney Company, big company. When there's a problem as serious as the problem we have here, they figure out how to fix it, not over the next 2026 and into 2027. If you guys have to go back to the PUC and ask for money to do it, you have a really serious problem. You should spend the money to do it. So I'd like an explanation as to why that isn't happening.
So I'll say, I don't think that it's a financial constraint. We are, as Joe laid out, we're spending already millions of dollars on just this circuit and then other areas, other parts of La Cañada and other parts of the community that we're making investments in. Some of it is, even if you quadruple the amount of money you were spending, you can't get it all done in a certain time frame. There's permits. Right. So in case you didn't hear, she was suggesting we hire more people, which we have been doing. In fact, we have increased the amount of planners, we've increased the number of linemen, we've increased the number of engineers at the company. But it's not just up to Edison. We also have to get permits in order to get the work done. We have to get road closures. It's a big, complicated area, and we work as quickly as we can to get these jobs done. In some of the examples that Joe explained, we moved from jobs that were scheduled for 2027 and we're able to rearrange, push other jobs out and prioritize this to get it done in 2026. I could put 10,000 people on it. It wouldn't get done in 2025. There's a lot of other steps and a lot of other entities that we rely on that authorize us to do this work. But we continue.
Old grandfather solar system without losing our power agreements that we were lured into signing with deals that now, if you put on more solar panels and you import more power into the system, you lose your special grandfather clause deal. Well, that's why I bought the system in the first place originally, and it's not big enough now, and I need batteries now because I can't risk 28 more outages. We're running 2 businesses out of the house, and it's just not working, but we don't have an option. You guys are sitting in charge of it all, and what do? You come out here not for the first time. How many times has Edison come here? And yet the damn slides are so small that people sitting in the front row can't read them. And that's not brain surgery. That's more slides, bigger fonts, move through them. I'm looking at this. I don't see how I can identify must be on the Haskell circuit. I must be because I'm out of power constantly as I look across the street and all the lights are on. I look up the street, the lights are on. I walk out to those streets, start walking down to our foothills, when I can see it, all the lights are on. So gee, I must be on the haunted circuit. But I can't tell because this lovely aqua grid you brought in doesn't in any way identify where big major streets are. I can pick out the freeway and that's it. All this could have been handled, not with glossies, not with all this, but with a bunch of slides, large fonts, so that in the fourth row I can read it, and those poor people back there can't read it. And not with this glossy, but with 10 pages of here's Gould, here's Berkshire, here's this. If I had to do a presentation like this, I'd get fired.
Thank you. I hear you. I know Marissa's got questions in the back, and then when you're done, Marissa, there's one right in the front.
Thank you. I must live on a street in the Haskell Circuit that has more power outages, longer power outages, because when I get onto the Facebook page and everybody was like, oh, mine's back on, and I'm still waiting. And on my street is a 90-year-old couple that are listening from home, two parents that just had two children that are 2 years old and younger. And we're also on a street, when we lose power, we lose cellular connection. So when I'm asked to check the website, I can't. And when we have serious power failures, I leave. I left at 5 p.m. during the fires, during the rains of 2024. At 2 a.m., I leave because I'm really worried about trees coming down, me getting trapped. So on top of everything else, with all the safety concerns, when we lose power, some of us lose cellular connection, and I have no way of knowing when the power will come on. I have to stand outside, use my phone, and I might get 1 bar. 1. And this has been going on for years, so it's a city problem, it's an Edison problem, it's every single cellular provider, because it's T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, nothing inside our homes. So as we try and solve problems, I worry about my 90-year-old neighbors. I worry about a pregnant neighbor who may not be able to call 911 if something were to happen. And I worry about staying home alone in the middle of the night when trees are coming down. So whatever you guys can do to help would be really appreciated.
There was one up here, Marissa.
I thank you for being here. I'm a little bit embarrassed of bringing this after what the lady just said and after people lost their homes in Altadena. Feels a little bit pity, but I would like to ask you because this is really something that I don't know how to solve. So we were on vacation. We live in a little cul-de-sac off Verdugo, and twice there's a cable came down. But one of those times we were on vacation and the cable was live. And my neighbors start calling and sending emails and whatever. And one of my neighbors finally got in touch with somebody at Edison, and the answer was call the fire department. And it's a cul-de-sac, there's children, there's dogs, etc. And we were like, well, we were on vacation, right? But it's a scary thought, no? Like, go and call the fire department. Okay, well, they called the fire department. Edison came hours late, sent one person to fix a live cable. And now the concern is this guy get electrocuted? Now I'm gonna have to call 911, no? But it's one of those things that it seems small, but it's so easily preventable. And it could cause like a big tragedy, a little kid on the cable, etc. So I just, it's not really a question, it's just an example of real life things that we're dealing with, besides the outages and all that
Yeah.
we have been talking about. Thank you.
I don't think that's small at all. Wire downs are very serious. It's why it's the number one thing that we communicate about in public safety messaging. And the protocol is to call 911, and 911 also calls Edison directly. They have a direct line. Then what we do is we send a troubleman. And so that is often a person coming by himself. And the reason we do that is because we have them currently roving across the whole service area. I promise you, he will get there faster than if we dispatched a crew from the service center that's closest to you. And so that's the protocol, that he will come alone. He's the highest trained, highest titled, qualified electrical worker in the company, and he is absolutely capable of working safely to isolate a down wire. Now, he might not be able to repair it on his own, but he can make it safe. And he will do that. Until then, he will coordinate and call a crew and figure out what else needs to happen. But you shouldn't be concerned if a truck shows up and there's one troubleman. You are getting the highest trained person in the company. And it is protocol, and people will tell you, call 911. Stay away and call 911. But the 911 coordinates directly with Edison. They have a direct line. There's no waiting. There's no call center agent. It's directly to a dispatcher who then knows exactly who is the closest troubleman, and the troubleman is dispatched. Sometimes in a storm, we have more than one wire down happening at the same time, and that troubleman who's closest might be working a wire down. So then we have to dispatch a troubleman who's a little further away. But what you just brought up is something we take very seriously, and we work them every single day.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments today. I know, Joe, you were kind of outlining how, I'll call it the firefighting, where you have these outages and you go, okay, identify this, and that has to be done. But what I haven't heard, and I've been looking at this map for the last half hour, that's one big convoluted circuit. It looks like a horse built by committee, for that old joke. It's really convoluted. I haven't heard anything about, maybe it's the design of the circuit itself, and maybe it needs to be broken up into sub-circuits, make it even smaller and smaller, like distributed generation. That I'm not saying going to DG, but maybe this circuit it's too big or too convoluted or too added on to be functional. And I haven't heard anything of if anyone's taken a hard look at that. I know you've been focusing on the firefighting aspect, which has to get done, but I haven't heard anything about the taking a harder look at the circuit itself and maybe redesigning it. And the reason why that's important is there is in the process of a massive multifamily residential building. It's going to be put right on Foothill in the middle of the Haskell circuit. That's going to be big volts, big amps, big kilowatt hours. And I don't know if the current circuit is even capable of feeding that while keeping the rest of us with adequate electricity. And so I would like to, I don't know if any thought's been put in it or you're aware of that, but there's going to be big, massive multifamily residential developments built on Foothill on the Haskell circuit, and that's going to impact this circuit. And so maybe the circuit itself needs to be broken up or redesigned. So I want to hear any comments on that if that's feasible.
Yeah, I'll comment on a couple of those things. I'll take them in reverse order. So the first comment about the new development, we do track that. So whenever they are applying for new service, we evaluate that. And there are a few circumstances where we've had to ask new developers to wait to commission a development until the infrastructure was in place to handle that. So we do take that development very seriously to ensure that the circuits are designed and capable of handling what they are. As far as how the circuit is laid out, that was some of the improvements that were made in 21. We put devices in to isolate portions of the circuit to try and make it smaller. Unfortunately, some of those have been defeated as we've made upgrades to reduce fire risk. So we've made the equipment operate for trouble a lot faster than it historically has, which means sometimes it does operate in front of those isolation devices. So I'm hoping to avoid getting too technical with it. And if you want to ask after, I'm happy to get as technical with it as you want. But that's a reason some of the additional work we have planned. So outages that would normally be very small from a localized squirrel or a tree branch have impacted a larger portion of the community because of some of those fire mitigations we've made. And by going back and doing the work we are doing now, one, we can eliminate some of the root causes altogether, but then we can add back some of that protection that would make events that should be small, small again.
But that's still the same single Haskell circuit. Where I was going was
Yep.
maybe it's two independent self-sufficient circuits fed by different substations, broken up so they're not all interactive, because you still have when there's an upstream problem, everything goes dark. But if you have two independent circuit, there's greater reliability.
Yep. No, that's definitely one of the ways we've fixed issues like this in the past.
Well, why not now then, on that circuit?
In this circuit, because by addressing some of the root causes through the covered conductor and the undergrounding work, that's a better mitigation than splitting it. Splitting it in half, so half of 9 is 4.5, that's still not an acceptable level of service. So there's a need to go after the root cause of those outages and mitigate that as opposed to just breaking up the circuit.
Excuse me, just quickly on that. Sorry, it's on the same subject. A while back, I requested to be segmented offloaded from Haskell substation because I know that's been done previously. I think there used to be way more customers than 1574, and now it's been reduced to 1574, or maybe less than 1574. And I was denied, and I would like to know why. Why I cannot request to be offloaded and segmented off the Haskell.
So we do evaluate that to isolate trouble sections. Typically, the circuits are laid out, though, to balance the load so that we don't, if transferring you to the other circuit overloads the other circuit and then just transfers the issue with you, that doesn't solve the issue, which is, again, why we want to focus on the root cause. But we have looked at that in areas where we've had a line to go out to feed a cellular repeater station that's had a lot of issues. We may transfer that and isolate that kind of lead to a small section. But where there's a large group of customers having an issue, again, fixing the root causes and addressing what's causing the outages rather than just transferring the outages to another circuit is a better solution.
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple questions. One is, and I heard you guys kind of allude to this in one of your little sidebars, the presentation doesn't really say anything about the comparative statistics of the Haskell circuit relative to other circuits that Edison administers. You were saying there's thousands. Where is the Haskell circuit in terms of problems relative to the others, and how does that inform your sense of priorities in terms of how much priority our problems get versus other places that are experiencing problems?
Yeah, so Haskell in 2024, likely in 2025, will be in the bottom 5%. There's a chance it'll be worse than that. Typically, programmatically, through regulatory approval, we're allowed to just go after the bottom 1% to make specific targeted improvements to that. But I think what I want to highlight with the Haskell is, in addition to the 7 large-scale outages, is the number of small outages. Those 13 pocket outages, plus there's been a vast number of localized transformer secondary type outages as well, and then the high number of momentaries. So in addition to going after those worst 1%, we're looking at statistics like the industry term is CME, or customers experiencing more interruptions than, and the number typically used is 4. So we would normally track that, and Haskell is definitely one of the poor performing circuits on that because of the pocket issues. So we've started going after not only the circuits that perform poorly, but circuits that have pockets perform worse than others. That's part of what allows us to accelerate the undergrounding and some of the covered conductor work that was originally in 2027. Because of that performance and using those metrics, we've been able to accelerate that work into 26.
Okay, my second question is related to that, which is, again, your presentation doesn't really talk at all about what your budget actually is for the repairs you're making to the Haskell circuit. And I'm curious, why there's not a financial commitment on your part in terms of these slides, in terms of what you're spending. And also, I want to understand in that context, obviously you guys, and we all have seen this, there are a lot of reports about your potential responsibility for the Altadena disaster. If you guys, like PG&E, have to file bankruptcy to get yourselves through that, I mean, obviously we'll end up having to pay for most of that, right? Because it'll get assessed back to us. But if that happens, in addition to the committed budget, how will that affect your ability to continue to make improvements potentially?
So I think I'll let Jill take the larger question. As far as the financial commitment for, we didn't put the dollars. So sorry, I'm trying to talk to the microphone while I turn around. The section in purple there, the undergrounding, that's about $8 million worth of work specifically for that. The red piece up there with the covered conductor is just over $1 million. So the recent quickly completed work was a couple $100,000 to rebuild some of the overhead pole tops in the red area. And then there's more work going on there to further isolate to make those outages.
But do you have a committed budget? In other words, what's the overall amount that you guys have decided corporately to spend on this issue? And what have you committed to do?
So there's over $10 million in approved projects specifically for Haskell that are related or that we've pulled forward because of reliability issues. That's already approved. We do continue to continuously evaluate that and add projects based on performance. And I'll let Jill handle the larger.
Thank you. So your second part of your question was related to the Eaton fire causation and what the financial implications could be for the company. So fire is still under investigation, that we don't have a final cause yet. But you might have seen that we did start a direct claims process because whatever the cause might be, we recognize that we're being sued and we want to help the community move forward quickly. We're in a much different situation now in California regarding utilities and wildfires than what was in place when PG&E filed bankruptcy after the fires in Northern California. The big change is that the legislature put into place what's called the Wildfire Fund. It was done through Assembly Bill 1054. So sometimes the media refers to it as the 1054 Wildfire Fund. And that is put in place particularly to prevent the potential of utilities having to file bankruptcy in order to cover claims, whether the fire is caused by the utility or not. If the utility is sued, could have to settle claims and have to then pay in excess of the assets that the utility have available. And so what we anticipate with Eaton is we'll have this claims process in addition to customers or people who were affected by the fire who might choose not to go through the claims process and might still choose to go through the typical litigation process. But either way, the settlements then will be paid for by the state wildfire fund. That was funded already by the utility shareholders and also utility customers across the whole state. And so in that way, this fire will benefit from the fact that it was a community funded, across the whole state instead of just like in each utility funded by itself. So that's the expectation for Eaton.
Mess ups on the part of utility companies, whether they settle out of court or whether they go to court to get more money and take longer. The taxpayers and the ratepayers throughout the state, it's like a widows and orphans fund, but it keeps you guys from declaring bankruptcy and having a wholesale change of employees, management, directors, everything. Which, are you starting to get the idea? We think maybe is necessary because it's not working.
I understand. Thank you. There's a woman with a question behind you.
Why don't you guys, with all your expertise and your wire roots and your poles and your wires, and your underground, why don't you set up a siren system? Why don't you go to work on a siren system here? So that if you do it, and next time the winds don't change and save us at the last minute, we know to get out before it's too late. That would be something you could do. It would really put your money where your mouth is. Start setting up a siren system. You've got the right of ways, nobody else have it. You have Joe, who knows electricity and circuits. Put in a siren system right now to demonstrate you are serious.
So thank you for that suggestion. It's not something we're currently working on, but we can go back and talk about it with the community partners.
So thank you. So two questions. I mean, clearly, this is a very frustrated crowd and
We
community,
expected, yeah.
given everything that's gone on for so many years. So here we are today. You're telling us what you're going to do. A lot of us have, PTSD from many rounds of hearing what was going to change, and it did not. So a couple of things. Somebody brought up earlier the fact the customer service issue. We are on Georgian, so not very far off Foothill, but we have when our internet goes out, we have no access to, our cell coverage goes down. So we can't look it up on the website. So when you call, the first thing is look it up on the website. So I think improving your phone system, if that's the only way people can communicate with Edison, would be a positive step. I think given the severity of the Haskell circuit and the 28 outages and all the trauma we all go through, I think we should have a dedicated ombudsperson. And I know even with the city earlier this year, when we had like 3 or 4 days of unplanned outages and no weather issues, I called the city Public Works, and the woman who I spoke to said, I've been calling Edison. I can't get them to call me back. I'm so sorry, but I can't even reach them, and I'm in this city. So I would appreciate, just in this interim period until you have somehow fixed the infrastructure issues, if you could improve customer service and make sure that all of us have a human being that we can call, because you had referenced that if you call customer service and go through prompts, you can find a person, but you can't. And the only way you can find a person is to go to the emergency down power line. And I feel badly, and I've called them many times, and they say we hear from lots of customers because it's the only way to find a human being. So, and then lastly, if you could, so you've made these commitments of what you're going to do in sort of a rough time frame. I think it would be very helpful if somebody had referenced, maybe you have the City of La Cañada and Edison together have a page on the city's website or on your website that is specific to the Haskell, and that you track every power outage from now on, and that you give us updates on what's happening, and then that we get to hear from we have to have some way to communicate with people. So I think there are customer service things that you could do. You could survey people in this room, and that would make managing this interim period until you fixed it, I think, better for people.
Yeah, I appreciate those suggestions.
This Jim and then.
Hi, I'm on Union, which is this little cul-de-sac that we just talked about with the down power line. The other thing interesting that happened on Union, we're right at the corner of Verdugo Boulevard. We're near the Verdugo substation. The other thing interesting that happened on our street recently was during 2024, I think we got these really fancy high-tech lines installed. They replaced 3 power poles, and they took down our power many, many times. And many times they told us they were going to take down the power and they didn't. But then other times they did take down the power and never showed up. And then other times they took down the power and they did show up, and so on. I mean, it was every combination, to the point that the neighbors were joking about whatever. So then in between them taking down the power poles and putting in new lines and all, I'm talking to the lineman outside. We joked about we're bringing our chairs and popcorn. And I mean, you have to laugh, And the guy says to me, yeah, this will be so cool because now the lines won't snap and cause fires. I said, you're kidding. Is that a thing? You have lines that won't snap and cause fires and wind events? And this is long before the fires, right? The recent Eaton fires. He said, yeah, that's what you're getting. Why am I learning this from a guy at like 11:30 at night while they're between pole replacements? Why am I not hearing it from Edison while we're going through heck, watching our line power go down, up, down, they come, they don't come, they come, they don't come. And I'm not getting the main goal of what Edison's doing. I'm hearing it casually from the hard hat guy, which is great, but not the way I expect to get the goals of the project, right? And it's kind of here in your handouts.
Right.
But if that's true, that's awesome. Bring me along with you. Give me something to cheer for, right? And if that's true, I want the whole city to have that, not the way we got it, not with all the ups and downs, but of course we want it for the whole city. And if that's true, it'd be awesome if our power isn't taken down during a high wind event, because during the Eaton fires, our power was taken down for the full 3 days or so that the whole city was down. We're on the far west side of the city, and then we were all evacuated. And I know this seems like a long story, but I think it's important to the economics of the region. We evacuate to a family home, which is an awesome little home with a great yard in Burbank. It immediately becomes clear that everyone coming out of Altadena and downwind Pasadena, our children's friends, they need places to evacuate. And we're occupying a bedroom and a house with a yard. And our house is fine. And so we really need to be brought back to La Cañada. We need power the minute it becomes clear that the wind's not blowing our direction. I know it's easy to Monday morning quarterback this, but here's the challenge. There's thousands of influential, connected, wealthy La Cañadans, and we're all occupying the resources out in the larger region. And my daughter's friends, who have a lot less resources, they need that extra bedroom and yard. And so we all make adjustments, as we all do. But what I'm saying is the thousands of us need to be brought back to our homes. And especially if our wires aren't going to snap.
Yeah.
That's really awesome news. So bring us along on your goals.
I
Do a better
appreciate
job of
seeing that. Yeah.
marketing to me so that I'm as people have said, we want you to be successful, so that I'm cheering for you. And we love our new lines and poles. Just make sure we understand all the benefits. So
helpful.
we know what we suffered for, right? And we
Understand.
thank you for that. On the day that the hot wire was down, the guy showed up at night alone. So I get that he's an expert. He did it. Nobody got killed. Great. But it was challenging. And then in my notes that I'm going to hand in, I also mentioned 3 fires that started. I won't go through it all, that started over about 10 years. And then we had a fire recently in one of the same locations. So it's not like it got repaired permanently. So we've had fires in our neighborhood that were all put out fairly quickly. They didn't turn into major,
Right.
events, but it is scary.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, basically, I'm a little bit pointed in my notes.
I'd love to see it.
It's, make the investment, because these fires, if they get out of control, they're not just going to burn a fence or burn a, whatever. They're a problem. So anyway, I'm going to turn to my notes, and thank you for coming, and thank you for giving us this
I
opportunity.
appreciate that feedback, and we take every ignition very seriously and investigate. So if you have more information, we will follow up immediately. Hey, Jim.
Hi, everybody. I thought I might stand because actually the audience for my questions and comments is actually my fellow residents. So, Marissa, thank you so much for kind of just mentioning my name at the beginning. I am not an Edison executive any longer. I left the company 2 years ago, but I actually worked directly for Jill. She was my last boss. My boss right before Jill, my first of 2 bosses, Jill's the second, is current SCE CEO Steve Powell. So I can tell you a little bit about from a perspective of what they're like as humans, what they're like as bosses, and just more generally, what the Edison culture is inside the company, what the priorities of the leadership are, what they spend their time on, how they help. So my family and I, my 2 daughters, teenagers at the high school, are, I think watching, hi London, hi Morgan, not bedtime yet. We are Haskell Circuit residents. We moved in 10 years ago. We inherited a $750 per year maintenance Generac 20 kilowatt whole home. So when the power goes out, as it does 28 times, we're okay. And the reason we're okay is because the sellers for us, who had nothing to do with Edison as far as I know, actually I know that for sure because our seller was Manny Mashoud, who is the current Chamber of Commerce president. Many of you know Manny in this room. I think he bought the old City Hall, if I'm correct, right? They actually purchased the Generac generator because, like us, they had 2 young girls and they were absolutely panicked at when the power went off and what the personal and emotional implications were for their girls, who were very young at the time, when that happened. So what I will say is I feel your pain, our pain, we feel it together. And when I first got to Edison, I was so excited. This is 2019. I mentioned, I think it was actually in 2020 to Steve, CEO Steve Powell. I'm on the Haskell circuit, and we had another outage last night, and it seems like it's one of the more problematic circuits. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's on your radar. He was the COO, Jill's role at the time, and he knew about it. I mean, he knew that was one of the worst 5 or 3 or whatever the metric was back then circuits in the company. And I actually think that at least partially, I mean, it was the bad service, but it was also Steve's commitment that led to this 2021 swarm. Everyone remember that? The cruise in the Presbyterian Church parking lot. Marissa and I walked the parking lot back when I was an employee, talking to folks, making sure they were focused on the right things. But somebody mentioned earlier, it didn't get fixed. Arguably, it got worse because I learned a new term tonight I didn't know when I was at Edison, momentary outage. John, thank you. I referred to it as the micro outages, right? They were the most annoying because for us, it was a little scary. Down 30 seconds later, a big pop on the roof as the thing energizes. And then, of course, I spend 25 minutes resetting all the timers. Annoying, but could be kind of more dangerous. So I wanted to say, one, I know the folks at Edison work hard on this, but they also do know that it's been a problem for a while. One thing I'd like to address, my role at Edison, I led about 10% of the company, kind of the back office operational guts of the company, the largest portion of which was procurement and supply chain, which means my organization was responsible for sourcing, negotiating, and contracting the half of Edison's P&L. That is what they spend in our ratepayer dollars with contractors to do a lot of the work, including mainly a lot of the new build work, a little bit less so of troubleman response. Those are, company employees. And so one challenge I was given, and which I hope the company is continuing to embark on, is how is Edison deploying those dollars in such an incredibly fiscally responsive way, picking always the lowest cost but qualified supplier to do the work, saving us all money, so that really more work can be done. So I appreciate, I think, sir, your comment around what's the money. Well, what's the money when you also factor in getting the best rates out of these suppliers and having an intolerance for waste among your contractor community? That was my job several years ago, and I hope the work continues. But I just want to.
It's nice to hear about it.
Apparently, yeah. I worked for him. I think it was 2020, but yes. Yeah.
Every year, but taking care of the problem, these doctors 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So as a former Edison employee and as a resident of La Cañada, aren't you frustrated that nothing really has significantly been accomplished in 6 years?
Well,
doesn't that bother you?
why do you think I'm here tonight? Why I'm here as a resident, not an Edison executive.
Has done it. What a great guy he is. What an outstanding leader he is. When our problems have only gotten worse. I don't get it.
Well,
How do you feel about it?
so I didn't say those things about Steve, great leader and all that. I said that they care. What I'm offering to the group here is I would like to be a resource for the community, to residents. If you have questions, if you want to know more, if you'd like some kind of soothsaying on what's really happening, and if maybe the comment about an ombudsman, I mean, maybe there's an Edison ombudsman, but maybe there needs to be a community ombudsman too. So just food for thought. I hadn't had that thought until you mentioned that a little bit earlier tonight. I will stay around for the whole time to help, and 2 nights. London and Morgan have a bedtime that's coming up, but yes, I will stick around and I'm happy to help the community because I'm one of you. I suffer the same outages.
I know it's almost 8 o'clock and you do have to leave the city hall, and I know Kim, our mayor, also has somewhere to go, but I wanted to make sure and give him the opportunity. But I'll take 2 more questions. I know she's been raising her hand.
But she's spoken before. I need to.
You decide, Marissa.
Yeah. So can we just let the other 2 speak? Do you have a Go ahead, chance to speak.
And why don't you go ahead?
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Because I actually just have 2 quick questions. One is, I assume that you all do this all over SoCal. How many times have you changed any of your plans that you have up here as a result of one of these meetings? How many times have you, I mean, we've heard a lot of good suggestions here. We've been here for, well said, going on 2 hours. What have you done in any of the, as a result of any of these public, discourse exchanges to change your plans? Is anything we've said tonight going to change anything on this presentation? Question number 1.
So I'm sorry, you're saying like the capital plans that we laid out,
Correct.
but if
When
there's
you-
feedback that you
Yes.
would say that you wouldn't want us to move forward with them?
No, I'm just saying what changes and how do you prioritize after you talk to the public? What method do you have to actually feed this back to your superiors to say, hey, we went to La Cañada, we heard some good suggestions about an ombudsman, blah, 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 other things, public service. Customer service, how do you actually take the feedback you're getting right now, feed it within the company and make a change?
So I'm going to invite Shinjini, who is their Senior Vice President of System Planning and Engineering, who is the one who prioritizes all of this work. So she's hearing it also firsthand, and she can answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah, so we take this into account as we come up with new plans. I've been taking notes as I'm hearing, like you talked about 3 fires in the Union, on Union Street. By the way, I'm also a resident of La Cañada, not on the Haskell circuit on Flint Ridge, and Haskell is not the only circuit that has outages, just so you know. But we can talk about my circuit's outages later. But we do take this. So and we'll go back. And by the way, another thing I'll say is, yes, we have been doing certain things in Haskell. As Joe said, it didn't completely work out the way we had hoped because other things change along the way, such as wildfire mitigation. Joe and team has taken the entire circuit and done very detailed location by location analysis and coming up with this plan. But to your particular question, we do take notes. We will go back and say, do we need to change something? And we do change it based on that. Not only
Okay,
here,
that's
but in other
encouraging.
places as well.
That's very encouraging. Okay, so there's a chance that maybe what we've said tonight actually will be manifested in some of these projects and beyond. I'm not saying don't do the projects, I'm saying in addition to, right? Okay, so then the second question I have is about public safety power shutoffs. I am probably in part of the Haskell circuit that will never be undergrounded. I don't know. I'm going to find out after we wrap here and hopefully you can tell me. But I'm on the Berkshire Dover Road and that is out all the time. So I'm good because I have a generator just like this gentleman. I'm from Florida, so we all get generators there because of hurricanes. So when we first moved here in 2013, I got a generator and I'm good. I'm good, but my whole neighborhood is not. So my question is this. I know you have the modeling and I read the nice flyer. When do you decide when to cut the power? For this upcoming season, I'm extremely concerned, obviously, because historically we had a situation very close to us and it's not clear. And believe me, I called all around to find out how you decide when to cut the power when the winds are at a certain level.
Mm-hmm. I can answer that. So we have protocols that are in place across the entire system on the type of infrastructure it is. So is it covered? Is it underground with partially overhead? Is it a bare conductor? We're looking at the type of infrastructure.
Okay.
And then we assign wind thresholds based on all the experience and lab testing on what is a safe wind threshold that we can tolerate. And that number then we compare against something called the fire potential index. And you can simplify that down to basically how dry is the fuel. And we do fuel sampling all year long. And we take information from other partners and we look at how dry is the fuel in an area under a circuit, what kind of equipment is that, and then what is the forecasted wind, and then what's the actual wind. And so there's a formula that is predetermined. And then every time we have a forecast that says there's going to be a windstorm, we identify which circuits might experience wind that's going to be in excess of what we think they can handle safely. And we mobilize a team that works 24/7. We do rotating shifts and manage that as an emergency. And then we will de-energize in advance once we start to see that the wind is going to breach that threshold. So it's very scientific.
So when
it didn't work in what way, ma'am?
It didn't work where you already knew from other disasters that a cable on a big metal pylon, not hooked up on either end, could, because of the cables that you operate nearby, which carry loads, during a windstorm, that cable could somehow re-energize the abandoned cable. Once you found that out, why didn't you drop that abandoned cable to the ground? You didn't do it because you thought you might, and when I say you, I don't mean you. Do it because it costs money to drop that abandoned cable. And sometime in the future, you might want to use it again. Your company left it up. Apparently, the other cable still in use was not turned off in time. The energy jumped to the old cable and it sparked the Eden fire and it killed all those people. And we didn't get I heard somebody say Genesis system. It didn't work. I got it. My neighbors didn't. So I was the one making phone calls saying, get out now. We have to be able to count on you because we are enslaved to you. We have no choice. And when it comes to a Generac system, I've had Generac out to my house twice and they've said 20,000. I said, go for it. By the way, what's the fuel? And they told me you can't use gasoline anymore and you can't use diesel anymore. So we use propane. And one of my friends is Altadena Search and Rescue. And he said, oh, that's what we want is more propane around. Boom, fire. So I didn't get the system. I'm going for the stupid Elon Musk Tesla batteries instead, just in case they probably won't blow up. But what I'm saying is, you have all these wonderful scientific things you rely on, but then you turn around and you cut the corners of not dropping that cable when Edison knew that cable could be energized. And it could then be a problem. You should have dropped the cable, and that's why you'll be ending up paying off people, whether you're the taxpayer, ratepayer, standby or through litigation. We don't trust you guys to do the right thing. Are you hearing that?
I'm hearing you, ma'am. I want to make sure, did I answer your question?
Partially.
Okay.
I hear that Lauren's saying, and I agree. What I want to just focus in on is Haskell Circuit.
Yeah.
It's a spaghetti.
Yeah.
So how in the world do you determine, based on what you said, your algorithm?
Yeah.
Do you segment? Do
Yes,
you
we
shut
do
down
segment.
certain parts of it?
We
And
segment
how-
at switches. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I interrupted.
Sorry, I just want to finish the thought of, can residents then in that segment request that the power be shut off in a public safety situation?
So we segment the circuit at the points where we're capable of isolating it.
Okay.
And so there's many switches on the Haskell circuit.
Right.
And so you can drop this section or that section, and the more switches that you operate, the more of it you drop all the way back to the circuit breaker, which is at the substation. When you open the circuit breaker, you drop the whole circuit. So each circuit is divided into segments.
Okay.
And then that segment, we know is that, the type of material it is. And then we have weather stations all over the service area, and there's a weather station assigned to each segment. So every segment gets an assigned amount of wind that it can handle. It has its own fire potential index, and then we're reporting, it's giving us real-time feedback about what the actual wind is. And that's the way that we operate PSPS, so that we don't have to drop all 1,500
Correct.
customers every time there's wind on one end of the circuit.
Exactly. And how do residents know what segment they're on and what weather station to be tied to? Just so we can double check and confirm that your algorithm is what we feel is safe.
Yeah, I think the weather stations are public. The fire cameras and the weather stations are public. I don't know that so I think you can look on your, on the map of, and where do we post the way? I know the fire cameras are all on UCSD, San Diego, but University of California. If you stay after, we can look it up.
Okay, because I want to know how we know as residents what segment we're on.
Yeah, so stay after. and
That's
we can
different
help you.
than just,
the whole
public
circuit.
stations.
Marissa, you
So-
want to take one more question? And then for people who didn't get it yet, a few of us will be able to stay and see how we can help you.
Thank you for being here. I have a question about, is there any kind of plan to improve the communications with the people? Because I opted in, I have a mobility device that I need to go very far that is electric and needs to be charged. And so I opted in for text alerts and that kind of thing. I haven't gotten one since the Eaton fire. before then, I would get them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it would still be the same information that was like, oh, the power will be out when it's been out for 2 hours and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
understand.
But is there a plan in place to make that communication more transparent and I, as a disabled person who's opted into this program, I just wanted you to be aware that that seemed to shut off at the Eaton fire.
Okay.
And we've had several hours-long power outages that I've gotten no information about.
So I
Thanks.
appreciate you sharing that. We do tests of the system to verify,
Yeah.
but if you're not getting it now, if you wouldn't mind just letting me grab your information right at the end and we can follow up directly.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know that was, oh, right in the back. Okay, you want to raise, if you could grab him right there in the back, he's in the doorway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. But we'll make sure that we look specifically into your account.
Thank you.
Yep, and if anyone else has not received any communications, please let us know. I appreciate the feedback about the timing and we are working on that, but thank you.
Well, thank you. Kim again. I heard you say reliable, safe energy. Yes. I heard you say unacceptable. Amen. I also heard you say that you were working on it. I've seen plans and millions of dollars of infrastructure and planning going into next year is when you think it's going to be ready. And so my question is, Ms. Anderson, will you come back here in April of next year and let us check in on the faith that you're asking for? Because the other thing you said is that it's about accountability. And I also heard you say you live pretty close by. So I don't think we're putting you out too much if we ask you to come back in April, yeah?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to come back.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And thank you.
Okay.
Which you go, there.